Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for July 11th, 2019. And I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight. Before we start, I just want to let you know that the Planning Commission is an advisory board to the Board of Trustees. The decision we make tonight is not final. Our report will go to the board, and they will have a final vote and meeting on this sometime in the future. They meet on the first Monday and third Mondays of every month. As we begin, I will have the petitioner come up, present their case, after which I will ask the staff to come up and present their report, and then if the petitioner has any questions of the staff report, he can come up and do so. After that, I will open the floor to anyone in the audience who has a question or a comment on this case. Okay, without further ado, the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Commissioner Dakshis, second by Commissioner Berman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Okay, first case tonight is case 2019-17P, parking determination for 7401 Lincoln Avenue, and with a related case 2019-18P, site plan approval. What I will do, I will ask the petitioner to present both cases at the same time. And sir, can I have your name and your association with the petitioner?
My name is Richard Cruz, KRUSE. I'm an attorney. I represent petitioner in both issues. Offices at 3924 West Devon Avenue, Lincolnwood, Illinois.
Thank you. Counselor, is the notice in order?
Notice is proper and correct.
Thank you for both cases.
For both.
Thank you. Okay, Counselor, would you kind of give us an overview of your petitioner's request?
Petitioner's request on the parking determination is perfectly set out by staff as far as the use occupancy of the facility as a religious assembly. To cut matters short, we strongly support and adopt staff's
recommendations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
One caveat,
Yes.
going forward, we fully intend, because there are times that there's going to be special events. They're primarily evening events, but we will take an active role in seeking licensing agreements with commercial buildings around the area, and there are a number of them that don't use all their parking spots. So as far as the parking determination, the staff's report is absolutely acceptable to us. We support it.
Sorry about that.
Didn't know what that was. And as far as the application for the adjustment on the site, I mean, that site's been there for a long, long time. I remember going there when I was a kid having the fish fries, so it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Nothing we can do about that.
No.
But with me tonight, for any questions the board may have, is Brendan May. He did the parking study, and I have Rafi, and I'm not going to mention his last name because I'll murder it, and the architect to discuss any issues relating to the existing facility, and Syed Ali, who is a senior member of the congregation. If you have any questions related.
Yes. Can I have those people would stand and I will swear them in? Gentlemen? Okay. Good evening. Raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Based on that, I turn it over to the board to ask any questions
Do
they
you
may
want
have.
to go through the site plan approval, or do you want to?
The site plan approval, under this zoning, it's a 1 acre requirement. I think we're several square feet short of. But this has always been that an assembly facility, as far as when it was a VFW hall, et cetera.
Can you kind of elaborate on the intended use of the building?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's well set out in the staff report. It's be used as a mosque, educational facility, 5 daily prayer sessions a day. Approximately 30 people attend those prayer facilities on a daily basis. Weekend classes for family education, attendance approximately 50 people. Weekday classes for youth and adult education, expected attendance of approximately 30 people. Friday prayers, expected attendance max out at 100 people. Special events. There's one major event in the year. It's the end of Ramadan. The attendance may exceed, but that's what we're addressing with the licensing of additional parking places, because that celebration doesn't take place until about 10 o'clock in the evening. So there's going to be a number of parking places available for that celebration. Additionally, the size of the facility doesn't really warrant in excess of the staff's calculations.
Okay, very good. Any questions of the petitioner? Commissioner Quinn.
This list of uses and expected numbers, do you have any background on how these numbers were arrived at?
Could you have them come up if they're going to?
Brendan?
Why doesn't everyone who might speak, because I'm going to have questions for each of them. So, makes sense. Really.
Please, gentlemen, come to the podium.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so just so everyone knows, we are being recorded. The part that is the mic is up there with the little sponge on the end. It is not anything else that's sticking up out of there. It is very important that anyone who speaks tonight speak into that microphone very, very clearly, because it's the only way that we're going to have minutes, because our court reporter has fallen ill. So please make sure that you speak clearly into the microphone. If you need me to assist with the graphics, I will do that. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you give us your name and your affiliation, please?
Yeah, my name is Brendan May. I'm with KLOA Inc. We're the traffic and parking consultant on the project. Our address is 9575 West Higgins Road, Suite 400, Rosemont, Illinois.
Thank you.
So those numbers were derived from their existing location, and those numbers take into account some expansion from moving from their current location to the proposed location.
One other question. I understand that midday Friday is a demand time. Is there anything similar to that during a Monday regular day in terms of prayer time?
No, that attendance is only expected for the Friday midday.
Okay. The others would certainly be accommodated by the 48 spaces.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions?
I have a question. In the parking map that you show for available on-street parking locations, Figure 2, you
Yes.
describe parking areas, public parking areas on the street in the surrounding area marked in orange. Did you do a study as to how far people actually do or will walk from a parking space to a public site? And if they will not walk this far, because some of this I think is unrealistic, to suggest that somebody's going to walk 4 blocks to the north down those side streets, what is it, 4 blocks, about 2 blocks. What alternative would there be when they won't walk those 2 blocks, but you have 175 people at a big gathering?
So the locations marked in orange and the indicated 250-foot radius was a radius we explored based off of direction from staff. It was a requirement as part of our study. As far as the parking on the street, our report finds that for the Friday prayers, all parking will be accommodated on site. And as was previously indicated, they are exploring licensing agreements with adjacent businesses for these events that occur in the evening when businesses won't be utilizing their parking lot. So it is not expected that someone would walk that far.
Could you point out for us, please, what those adjacent or nearby business locations are?
I do not have that information at this time.
Was it part of your study?
Not the
Not the alternative sites?
No.
Rafi?
Give us your name,
Currently, I mean,
Rafi.
Rafi Arzumanian, I'm the architect for the project. They're exploring different options, but they have reached out to 7384 Lincoln, and they are in communication with them to come to make arrangements for use of their parking.
Is that the, could you point that out on the map? It looks to me to be the building immediately to the southeast on Lincoln Avenue.
Is it to the southeast?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
And how many spaces are available in that lot if they were able to make that
I
arrangement?
believe they have, look at my notes, I think right now they have 120 parking spaces.
That are not used at night?
I don't think any of it is used at night.
I have a different question for, I don't know who on this one, possibly the people that represent the association. Where is the prior location? How is that used? How many mats are there, and what is the parking situation around it?
Up to now, they have been doing these in homes. They've congregated in homes. This is the first time that officially they're acquiring a space to do this. So it's a very small congregation, and that's what it is. That's how they were able to accommodate it in homes. So at this point, it's time to grow hopefully a little bit, so a building that they can call home.
I have another question for you, Rafi.
Yes, sir.
The building that I saw in the diagrams
Mhm.
that is being used is the current VFW building,
Absolutely.
with only slight modification to the exterior, and some modification.
The exterior modification is to introduce a ramp to make it ADA compliant, and of course upkeep, but no real change to the exterior. And on the inside, it's really a lot of demolition and kind of reconfiguration of bathrooms and accommodating for a future elevator so that the basement can be used. But that's really the extent of it. It's very minimal modification, both on the inside and outside.
And did I notice something about the back deck, some back
There
picnic
is
area?
There is a sunken back deck, which is in the lower area. The retaining walls are really in bad shape there, so that needs to be addressed. That's an existing sunken deck that it has a walkout from the basement.
And that exists now, and
That-
what you intend to do is to rehab that so that way it
Right.
is not caving in.
Right, literally, it's caving in right now, so it needs to be attended to.
And will that be used in is it the intent to use this in a public way? And then are we talking about outdoor parties,
No.
dining,
No.
loudspeakers?
No, absolutely not. There is no music, there is no alcohol here of any kind. So it's really not a social gathering, it's really a social gathering in a sense of congregation, but no social activities in that sense. It's really an educational center.
So the outdoor deck could be used, but it would be used in the same quiet manner as the rest of the building?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mr. Quinn?
I was at the site about 45 minutes ago, I guess, and there appeared to be a lot of ample parking, especially on Lincoln and Jarvis, and to some extent, I think, Kenton. But I think the report mentioned something, 84 spaces, probable spaces in the vicinity. I saw that. I saw a number of 20, and then I saw another number of 84.
Yeah, so the 84 includes everything shown on the exhibit. Show this one here.
On the exhibit with the orange yellow.
The orange,
Yeah.
okay.
And then that number goes down to think it was 50, 55 spaces within the 250-foot radius.
Okay.
And then the 20 was derived solely off of Lincoln Avenue.
I also did notice directly across the street there, south of Jarvis on Lincoln, is a commercial building, non-retail. It looks completely underutilized in terms of parking spaces. Can anyone, or maybe staff or somebody later in the reports, give us the history of how this building was utilized at its peak period, its history, in terms of use, when the time comes?
Yeah,
I'm curious, I didn't grow up in Skokie.
Any other questions of the petitioner? Mr. Kraus, do you have anything else to offer? Or
Question
comments?
relating to the history of the place? Yeah, I did grow up in Skokie, so born and raised. It's been a VFW hall that was built, I think I was in high school when it was built, so you get an idea how long it's been there. Very successful operation for a long time. Like I said before, Friday night fish fries were pretty good, and it was very active. And then I think as all VFW halls have sort of declined in membership and operation, it was available, and it was a good location, and that's why we're moving forward with this project. But, yeah.
So it has a past history of being busy with special events.
Oh, yeah, they had a lot of, at one time, back in the 60s and early 70s, very active. But then, after, in the mid-80s, it declined quickly. But I think, in fact, the attorney that closed the deal with us, he does a lot of these VFW halls that are being sold and closed down, and he said it's just, I guess, guys from the Second World War, they're not here anymore, so it's certainly not, it was not effective. When we bought the place, one of the biggest issues was eliminating all the alcohol in the bars and coolers and stuff like that, because this will not function with alcohol in any way, shape, or form, okay? It's just not going to happen.
Okay.
But, yeah, one time it was a great place.
I just want to add that we had a case related to this site many years ago. What happened was the VFW hall, or the group, sold off most of the property behind them. That's where the homes are built now. And that was an effort to raise some capital and to reduce the real estate taxes.
Right.
So back then, when they had the big events, they had plenty of parking.
Oh, the whole spot was all the way up to,
Oh, yes.
when again, going back,
grass, I think.
Yeah.
Wasn't that all grass, Peter?
it wasn't,
It was.
They were a baseball field.
it was not paved.
Yeah.
Right.
But going all the way up to the railroad tracks, they would use that for parking and stuff on
Yes.
special Friday nights. That was
Okay.
pretty crowded.
Counselor, anything else you want to add?
Nothing,
I have one more question for the parking person.
not me.
Is keeping the parking map up there, I'm sorry, is all of the anticipated orange-yellow parking, is that all Skokie, the village of Skokie, or is some of that Lincolnwood?
That's
It goes into Lincolnwood,
So only Skokie is to the north and Lincolnwood is to the south?
right there.
Well, actually, Skokie's on the west and Lincolnwood's on the east of the street going north. So when you see that,
Lincolnwood's on-
So what I'm looking at on the chart is some strong yellow lines to the north of the site, straight north, and that is Skokie, is that correct?
North and south of Jarvis.
Thank you, that's
Yeah,
right, that's
right.
that's right. And south of that is
This is
Lincolnwood.
Lincolnwood, this is Skokie.
So, two questions. Number one, has Lincolnwood weighed in on this?
They were,
Well, I wanted to know if the parking person, I'll ask the village in a second. Did you discuss
Not that
that?
I've heard, no.
Number two, did you as a parking determinator find any strength in looking toward the northwest on Lincoln Avenue and changing that from no parking to parking?
From what I do know, I don't believe the pavement is wide enough to allow parking along that
But
stretch.
you didn't
we're
study
doing.
that?
I did not study it, no.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. At this point, I'll ask staff to present its case.
Okay, thank you. And I will give you guys more details because I think you're seeing stuff without the background and it's making you a little concerned. So let me just go through the
But by the way, does
basis of
anybody,
the case.
we have copies of the report?
This
You all
stuff's been
give
given out,
copies
but
of
not the
report?
attachments because the package would have been too big.
Okay,
Okay, so just to be clear, so we have two things that are happening. So first is the parking determination. Up until a few months ago, the parking requirement for all religious assembly was one parking space for every 4 seats or 80 linear inches of pew, so 20 inches per bottom, okay? At that rate, this would have been able to almost double in size. What we found is over time, families have changed and the uses of these buildings changed, so now they're determined by the Planning Commission. So the parking that is available on this site is actually double on their normal 100-person attendance than almost every other church or synagogue in town. So it's significantly double the amount of what our current requirement was up until a few months ago. So I just want to be very clear about that when we talk about the way the usage is. The other thing I want to be clear about is for most uses in town, we do not park for things that only happen once a year. Or else we would have little buildings surrounded by big parking lots that were completely unused all the year. The last part was that this map that you're all been looking at that made everybody inhale when it came up is not parking for this site. It is just the locations of where parking is allowed. So if a synagogue has high holidays and for that particular day, if they do drive at that synagogue and people do park in the neighborhood, that's just going to happen. If it's Christmas at a church or Easter at a church, those big events, that's going to happen. That's just regardless. But most of the time, almost all the time, the parking is contained on site. So when we talk about these once-a-year events, we do not put parking requirements on things that happen very infrequently. Otherwise, we'd be wasting huge amounts of land on parking spaces, and that makes water runoff that ends up getting in everybody's basement. So we want the water. We'd rather have green spaces than parking lots that aren't used. Okay, so some of the facts in this case for the parking determination, the mosque, the building right now is just under 4,000 square feet. About 2,000 of that will be used for the assembly area. They've already gone over the different occupancies for the different events that will be happening. So for the things that will happen once a week, that'll be about 100. So there's 48 parking spaces for those 100 people. So it is extremely unlikely, based off of the way, even at 2.5 people per car, which is way less than 4 per car, which had been the requirement for all religious assembly. This parking lot is actually fairly large for religious assembly use. For those events that happen once a year, they could have more. We are putting an occupancy limit on this building. You'll get in the site plan approval that will cap the occupancy. We're also capping the number of mats that will be available for prayers to 120, which is at 2.5 per seat, based off of the parking spaces that are available. So the capacity in the building will be 192. Peak attendance for typical events will be 100. And I think I covered everything else on that one, summarizing. So staff is recommending that the parking requirement be 48 for this site, for this building. And that should be able to accommodate, with the exception of that one time a year, where actually the number of people per car will probably be higher because it is more likely that families will be in that. That is correct, right. So on those days where they have the higher occupancy, it is very likely that more people per car will be arriving. Okay, so that is our recommendation, is 48 parking spaces with the limitation that the building capacity not exceed 120 prayer mats during religious services and 192 people total on site, and that includes the grounds. All right, site plan approval. Now, in the residential districts, religious assembly is a permitted use. It is a special use in business districts because we actually want to have religious assembly in places where people live, not where people need to be working and shopping. Under those rules, though, there's always been this minimum of 1 acre. This property used to be significantly larger. It included all of the houses that were built about 15 years ago, Mr. Porter, is that about right? That are to the north, and the one that is to the east east. Prior to that, this was one site. There was an option that the VFW had to put more houses on this site. They did not exercise that option. It is not part of the approved plan, but what was left was a parcel that was 0.94 acres. So it is a very, very small amount under the minimum. If this was an acre, we would not be having this hearing right now. So what we're here to discuss is whether the site is appropriate for the use, not whether the use should be here. Okay, so it's site plan approval. So what we're going to go over is the facts of the case regarding the site. And I will be starting, they've already gone over the petitioner submittal, so I'll be starting on the staff analysis, which is on page 3 for those of you that have report. So the current parking lot that is missing some interior trees. This was actually the area where the VFW used to park. They did pave the lot. Because it was intended to be temporary, we did not make them put all the landscaping in at that time because it was going to be ripped out potentially. But at this point, the parking lot will need to come up to code. That will include planting some parking lot trees around the perimeter and also putting parking lot screening, which is shrubs and other smaller trees on the perimeter of the property by the parking lot to shield it from the houses. Currently, that is not the case. You can see the entire parking lot. So that will be one of our recommendations. The engineering division, which also, and our traffic engineers did review the independent study by the private company, and they agree that 1 space per 2.5 prayer rugs is an adequate distribution of parking. It will be adequate for almost all occasions. The floor plan currently shows 104, which is 42 parking spaces. So right now, the plan is 104. They can go up to 120, but after that, there will be no more allowed. The village does periodically check religious assembly. Matter of fact, we just found one today, and we met with them, where they've exceeded their requirement, and they've had to make alternate accommodations, or else they're in violation of the law. So just to be clear, this is something we will check on a periodic basis when we do our inspections of the site. So it's a permitted use in the R2 district. The site plan approval is to accommodate, again, once, just because it's less than 1 acre. If the site was larger, again, we would not be having this hearing. The first phase of the original development was to the north and the east. Someone asked about timing on this. So today, our intern actually found pictures from the mid-1950s when the building was new. Of events that were going on here, and there were very large crowds. So we actually have photographic evidence of that we just happened to stumble across today when he was looking through a history of Skokie site. As an institutional use, the VFW already could accommodate large groups of people. It should be noted that certain landscaping improvements were not required, and they will be required at this time. They will also be required to put in bicycle racks, just as any other use would for those educational periods in case anybody did want to ride a bicycle. We have a bicycle parking requirement along with a vehicle parking requirement for all new uses. So staff recommends the petitioner's request for the planned development to operate the religious assembly on a site of 0.94 acres rather than the 1 acre minimum lot size be approved, subject to the conditions that are listed on pages 4, 5, and 6. The only things that are to be of note is one, the requirement that they put in 2 bicycle parking spaces, that they put 3 parking lot trees in, and screening, that they are limited to 120 prayer mats, and no more than 192 people are to be on the site at any given time.
Just correct it here.
All the rest are standard conditions that are given to almost every single use that are in the village.
We were just looking at the staff report, and I know you made the statement that if it was an acre, it wouldn't be required to have a public hearing.
Only for the parking, correct?
Well, site plan approval occurs after 1 acre. So
you're correct.
Over an acre
I'm sorry,
would
that was
require
also a change of
public
use.
hearing, so
Thank you, Peter.
I wanted to be clear about that.
We recently changed the rule to anything over an acre anywhere in town, except in industrial zones.
Yes.
Has to go through site plan approval.
Thank you. So noted. It'll be corrected in the report. Any questions of the staff?
Is there any requirement for there to be any screen, landscape screen, or any other screen between the building and the neighboring residential properties? I drove around Skokie recently just to look at that, and I note that there are other institutional and religious uses throughout the village in residential neighborhoods as we want them to be. But usually they are buffered. They don't, most of them don't share a common green yard with the neighbor. There is an alley sometimes, there is a fence,
Right.
there is buffering of vegetation.
So there's already a fence here, and there's also, I think, is that true? On the north end? I believe there's also a fence here.
There's a fence there, yes.
No, we're screening, no? Just the corner of it, I can see. There's definitely one on the north side.
We are proposing fences.
What's that?
We are proposing fences to buffer.
Oh, maybe that's your fence on the plan then.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
That's maybe I should ask the petitioner rather than the staff. That was my question. Noticing that most institutional and religious uses have some buffering between them, I wondered if there was anything here. And if whether we're requiring it, whether they're suggesting it. We'll wait for them to come back up later. They'll describe it to us.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of depends on what the location is. Like, I think the larger the site, the less likely there is to be screening, and the tighter the site, the more likely there is to be screening, but that isn't a hard and fast. It's not necessarily consistent.
Well, this site's also a little different because that's a front yard for the residential properties. And I guess I'm not quite sure where the fence is either, not because we thought there wasn't going to be one, because it could be in an odd location. And it may look worse than, it might be better not to have a fence there, just to have a nice lawn and everything.
And we will be adding, we are requiring that they put parking lot screening along here, and also in the, in the front over here.
One more question. The compensatory storage basin that sits between to the north of the subject property and the residences, that is green space, depressed in geography, but it is green space shared by both the potential petitioner's use and the residences. Is that correct?
There's a drainage easement that's in there, and that was when the area was subdivided, which included this lot that the VFW is on. That is accommodating stormwater for that neighborhood.
So it's shared public use area when it's not filled with water, but
It's not public, it's private property, but it is a drainage easement.
it's private to each of them.
Yes, their lot lines go right to here.
I see.
So these five houses and the VFW all share the land that drainage easement is on.
All right, we'll hear more about the fences in a little while.
Okay. Any more questions of staff? Yes.
One more question. That's Lincoln Avenue to the northwest of the site is impossible to park cars on?
That's a US highway.
Parking is to the south.
There is parking to the south.
In Lincolnwood,
Yes.
but not in Skokie.
So my question was,
Yeah.
why is that? Not
Yeah.
why does Lincolnwood do this and not Skokie, but is it possible then for us to allow parking to the north? Is there any reason why we prohibit it? And if we were to allow it, not only would we relieve a whole lot of concern on parking at this site, but we would also provide more parking for the bike trail.
Well, the parking is indented on Lincoln and south. I mean, it's in further. And then when you get to the north, you have the bicycle path and everything, so it really doesn't work well at that location.
Yeah, I think the right-of-way widths are different also,
Yeah.
because they have the median, and their cross-section is much wider, yeah.
Okay?
But I don't know the answer to that, but it is my understanding that the state is not allowing any more on-street parking on any state highway. That's the new policy as of just this year. Regardless of where it is.
That's a simple answer, regardless of the right of way.
But that's a policy, that's not a law, but we were just informed about that just with the change in administration.
Okay?
Any other questions, staff? Steve, thank you very much. Mr. Kraus, would you please come back up? Or Cruz, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything else you wish to offer, or do you have any comments on the staff's report?
No, we adopted.
Okay, I believe the commissioner has a question of you.
I'd like the answer of the question of the fence. There is,
I'm not the guy for the fence.
Right.
Rafi is the guy for the fence.
I shall answer it by not answering it. I think we're going to work with staff and kind of determine where fence would be appropriate and where landscaping buffer will be appropriate, but definitely will comply with whatever requirement the staff has in terms of buffering with the neighbors and the street. I mean, there are issues, for instance, right by the intersection, when we're talking about buffering that parking, that's something we would like to discuss with the staff, and given the angle of Lincoln Avenue into Jarvis coming in there, just for visibility portions, we might ask them to allow us to pull the screening a little bit back. That's about the only place that I think we might have a conversation about it, but the rest of it will comply as required.
I think the bigger questions of the neighbors is going to be the two big buffers that I see, one along the eastern perimeter of the parking lot to buffer from the houses on the street. And is that anticipated to be a planting?
Right now, that's
Buffer?
planting. That's landscape. Because of the amount of grass area we have there, we have an opportunity to have some nice landscaping, and I think aesthetically and visually will be nicer for both sides. East-west,
Yes.
on the side behind the retention pond. A fence makes more sense because there isn't a lot of room and it's kind of narrow, so at least that's the direction we're leaning toward. But it also depends, as I said, how the staff directs us, and we'll definitely comply.
I want to remind fellow commissioners that this became a major issue when we approved Chicago Jewish funerals at the corner of Skokie Boulevard, Dempster, and Grosse Pointe, that center, where we discussed fencing because the neighbors were quite concerned about the movement of an institutional use into their residential neighborhood, which was formerly a commercial use lazy boy, and because of the beauty of the fencing and the direction of the lighting on the parking lot, the neighbors were happy. Okay,
We'll do our best to have our neighbors be happy as well.
good, thanks.
Before you leave, Rafi, any other questions of the commissioner? Okay. All right, at this time.
Can I make just a point of
Certainly.
clarification? All right. So this is the actual plat of survey, so this is the existing condition. Sorry. So there is a fence here, which is my understanding that is going to be replaced. That's the neighbor's fence, is over here. There looks like there's a small section of fence here. And then the fence that Rafi was talking about, which is proposed, which is here, was in the staff preliminary plan review to create that buffer because of the distance.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I welcome any questions or comments. As you come up, is there a sign-up sheet there, Steve? We will give you a sign-up sheet. If you give us your name, your address, we will notify you. And also, you will receive a copy of the Plan Commission report. We will notify you when this case will go before the Board of Trustees. Do we have a formal sheet? We'll put that sheet. In the meantime, would anybody who'd like to speak come up, please? And if you don't speak, you're more than welcome to sign up to get a copy of the report and to be notified when this meeting will go before the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, please speak into the microphone, address, give us your name and address, and please address the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Simon Chickchay, 7405 Canton Avenue. I live probably about 50 yards from the entrance of the proposed site. I think my concern, my major concern, and the concern with the other residents is parking. I know that's what we're here for. And most importantly, to us at least, is a small community, small neighborhood feel that we moved into, that we bought into in the first place. The parking, I was kind of looking at this, and I've never seen a lot of this documents, and I know I don't have the rest of it, like you said, we didn't get all of it. But from what I was looking at, it's a congregation of about 100 people regularly, which I'm not sure how many congregations open up for only 100 people, which I'm a little bit skeptical about. But I was looking at the 192 number of members that'll be coming on special events, during special events, wondering how they came up with that number. And I see that there's 48 parking spots. If you multiply that by 4, that's where the 192 would come from, which also makes me skeptical. I'm sure it makes the other residents of the neighborhood skeptical as well. So we just really want to make sure that what we bought into, what we're paying our taxes for, and all the voters in the neighborhood as well, keep that small neighborhood feel that we bought into. I'm pretty confident, along with the other members, other neighbors of ours, if that was the case, if this was the case. Not to say that there can't be anything there, that we'll be here fighting over anything that's there, but a congregation like that, that all congregates at the same time, leaves at the same time, creates traffic, creates parking issues. Myself, my wife, my family, we park on the street, that street there, the street, if you want to put this back up here. I mean, this accounts for everybody that's here, you know.
And how long have you been at your home?
I've been 7 years.
Okay.
I've been in the neighborhood. My mother lives just up Howard, 24 years.
Mhm.
So I got plenty of family that live right on Birchwood, live down the block on Kenneth as well. So we're all kind of right in the surrounding area. So, I mean, I encourage any of the residents that want to come up and voice their concerns as well. I know I'm not the only one, because I was approached by other residents, by other neighbors here. So we just love your consideration. Keep that in mind. It's something
Now,
that we care deeply about.
Now, in the past, and this is, I'm not sure how long it's been, but I know the VFW, when they were operating, they did have weddings and occasionally, well, the fish fries, of course, and
Sure.
and other events there. So were you encumbered by those events
Okay,
at
so
all?
the only event in the last 7 years that I've been there was literally one barbecue that they had out there that I remember. I don't know if any of the other residents remember anything in the last 7 years that came up. I don't. I saw them, great people. They did not park anywhere on the street. They weren't very many of them. Like I think one of the gentlemen alluded to. There wasn't that many members. It was just a nice barbecue. They invited us all over, people in the community, great guys. Other than that, I had not seen that. Now, living in the area, I do know that before all those houses were built, there were big events. And I do remember them parking, I believe it was gravel, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of it was grass. I know there was a
Park
baseball
gravel,
field out there somewhere, and they all used to park all over the place. And that's the last time, and this is probably, I mean, maybe 20 years ago, was the last time I actually saw a big gathering at this site.
Mhm.
Now you're looking at 48 spots, a bunch of which are handicapped. I know where that's all going to bleed into. I know it's all going to bleed into the neighborhood, including the traffic. And now, most importantly, and I may be paranoid, but I know you guys got a bike trail there as well. You get everybody congregating at the same time, leaving at the same time, and bike traffic. You're alluding to a possible problem that's going to end up resulting in a traffic light there. And that's something I know we all like to avoid, because now we're talking major through traffic on the first block going, that can cut across the house.
Simon, you already have accidents happening at that corner always.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we have had accidents. There are people still using it for through traffic. It's just gonna, make it exponentially worse.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
Good evening.
My name is Lauren Johnson. I live on 7401 Kenton. Lived there 20 years. And something that has not been addressed here is what happens in the wintertime when we have snow, okay? As far as the VFW lot, I know a little bit about this. I worked for the Village of Glencoe. I've worked there 30 years. so I know about snow removal firsthand, all right? Anytime that you have an abundance of snow, you have to put it somewhere. Are they gonna be willing to pull that out of there with semis or whatever? They're gonna push that into the wetlands, or, because you're gonna lose spaces. There's no question about it, all right? The other thing, you're also gonna have one side of the street, people are gonna only be able to park on one side of the street during the wintertime, all right? And lately, we have been getting a little bit more snow every year, all right? I just want to know if that was taken into effect, if there was any thought on that. The area's always been very peaceful and quiet. As far as the commercial buildings across the street from where I live, that's Lincolnwood. They have a constant problem with snow removal there. I know because they push it on my parkway every single winter. And it also depletes the amount of parking that they have in their lot. So I just wanted to find out if there was any type of proposal or consideration for this. I don't know. But anyway, I think that this is something that should be looked into.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marty Shuck.
You could
I live at-
position that microphone better. Yeah, there you go.
Marty Shuck, 4612 Fargo. I'm one of the original purchasers of one of those houses over there. Been there from day one. My concern with like the rest of the residents is the parking. Also, the aesthetics that I think they're willing to propose to put either vegetation or trees, maybe those tall trees, to keep the noise level down for the residents there. I heard, I'd like to know, like, what time do, I heard 10 o'clock. Is that the start or the finish of most of the events over there, major events?
Like, I think the Friday night prayers will end they end at night.
They end at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
We'll ask what the fine times they are.
Okay.
We'll make sure that we find out.
All right, and as far as the one graph with the parking going down Kenton Street, where they estimate that's where the traffic, they could park, because there's no parking on Lincoln Avenue, as you said, and there probably never will be north of Jarvis, because that would create a bottleneck from the 2 lanes each way going north and south up to Jarvis. And after that, if they put parking there, there would create a bottleneck, and that'd be a nightmare for traffic going north. As far as traffic on Kenton goes, if it gets too bad, would the city consider permit parking?
That have to be discussed. We don't.
I mean, you're gonna send out field representatives and check on these, the parking around there if the complaints come in from the residents.
We'll have to see how it goes.
Because, I lived in Chicago before I moved here, and that permit parking was a fact of life for most of the people in the high-density areas. Excuse me. But that's about it. I think the parking and the aesthetics that they're willing to put, that would help.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ashra Yonan. I live at 4630 Fargo, which is...
That's the actual aerial. Right here.
Yeah. And the question was for Mr.
This is you.
Yeah, so my question was for Mr. Rafi when he said he's gonna plant trees right there. I have a fence right there. And you have about 24 inches exactly on the survey to put those, your fence and the trees, which is they will not fit.
No. Right, where's the trees there? They'll be here.
Okay. So I have two kids under age of 4, and around there, if any car parks that in any of those parking lots or goes through, there might be an accident with the kids. And my kids always, that's my backyard right there. If any car goes through by an accident, one of the kids will be hurt. And their bedrooms are above there, and any alarm, if they nap twice a day, if any alarm goes on or off, they're up. And if you have, sometime, like you said, 10 o'clock, that will be a problem, an issue with that. Always. Because they're always in the backyard for the summer. And Isaac as well, that's another neighbor on the right, he has a kid as well that they play around there. Not in a parking lot, but around the green area that they have. And accident can happen. And if the car goes through, it will go through 100%, and it will touch it's a plastic fence, so it's very dangerous. Third of all, the property value will always drop if this goes on and goes through. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, my name is Vikram Patel. I am the resident of 4626 Fargo Avenue. I live in Skokie like more than 25 years. Out of that, 15 years I am living that section. Before that, I was living like one street on Jerome Street. So my question, I moved there. I'm living in Skokie because of my kids. Right now my kids are a little older. But I moved because of my kids and because of the peaceful environment, because of safety and everything. That's why I moved in Skokie. And still, living on Jerome, I still chose this site again for the new house in Skokie only because of that thing. So when I see here, there will be a prayer for 5 times in a day. And there will be, on a Friday also, there will be another prayer. How can they will be assured that the area will be still peaceful? And right now, if you go there, there is no noise, nothing. And when they say there is a special event, at that time it starts in 10 days, and I don't know how many days that events also. So how are you going to maintain the trespassing? Because once there is an activity, there is a community center and anything, everybody will be cut short and then go in that one. So how are they going to prohibit the trespassing? How are they going to maintain the peaceful area? That's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Do you mind if I add one more thing?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So, appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. One thing that I did want to address that was brought up with the parking people, they were talking about 7384 Lincoln, where they're trying to negotiate parking there. What's there right now, there's a business, it's like a parking business there. They don't really park on that side that faces Lincoln. They park on the other side. But there's the American ice skating rink that's right there. And they get together, if you want to pull this. Yeah, let's just move this guy. Yeah, okay. So where they're talking about is right on the other side here. You can't really see it, but it's here, and it's these spots. But these spots get filled up when they have hockey tournaments. We know that for a fact, and they run kind of right on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I've seen it for a fact, cars do park here, and there's only this many spots, and they have this parking lot as well. This is all for the hockey rink. So as far as where they would be able to park or where they'd be able to negotiate parking, I know there's a commercial building here, which I used to work at. They also have it's like hospice, not so much hospice, I forgot what they call it, like home care, whatever. So they always have people parking there. They're in and out of there a lot as well. So I don't know where, if you want to bring the parking guy back up, because I'd like to hear where else they would possibly find parking in the immediate neighborhood. I know up from there, there's up here is condos and apartments, so, and townhouses as well. Over here is it's a car dealership, exactly, and there's not much parking there as well. So that's the biggest concern for me, and I'm sure I can speak on behalf of all the residents, is parking. We know it's going to cause a lot of traffic, a lot of parking, and that's why I want to come back up here and address when they brought
Well,
up.
as of today, the petitioner has stated that they were negotiating for parking space, and nothing is firm yet, so what I would do, I'm going to ask them to, when the case goes before the Board of Trustees, that they have something, written.
Please. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, again, this report will go to the Board of Trustees along with all your comments. It's all being recorded. It'll be written down for the trustees to listen to and actually read. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is William Patterson, 7435 Kenton. I've lived there going on 42 years now, so I'm well familiar with the area. VFW still had the ball field and everything out there when I first moved in. Certainly a concern that I have even today, let alone with increased activity, is the traffic on Kenton. Kenton is a cut-through from Howard to Lincoln, okay? And now we're talking about adding additional traffic multiple times of the day. And I'm sorry to say it, but those nice little octagonal red things with stop written across them, people don't believe in them. They cruise through the stop signs, and that's both at Birchwood and at Jarvis. And I don't care if they're going north or south. So the traffic pattern on Kenton is bad enough as it is. And so if there's going to be increased traffic, I think that is something that definitely needs to be looked at, is stopping the cut-throughs, enforcing the stop signs. If it's speed bumps, which I don't necessarily want a speed bump because I live there, but if that's what's going to control traffic better, then I think that's something that the village needs to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Thomas Green, 7417 Kenton. Parking, 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 not on Kenton. It's dense. We move, it's not dense now. We do not want it to become dense. I never knew a religious institution, including the one that I attend, that was not interested in growth. And I'm sure that it's the size that it is now, and it's going to multiply in the future. This is the desire of my religious institution and others. Parking is going to be intolerable. Traffic is going to become intolerable. Believe it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay.
I have a couple of questions for the staff, because it will be responsive to the things that were raised. Ready?
Yep.
Number one, we'll talk about snow removal. Is there any requirement that when a institution has a 48-car parking lot that is designated for the number of mats, prayer mats in a facility, that snow be removed such that the spaces always be available?
No, not in any parking lot in town.
So that if the snow does mound and wind up limiting 5, 10, and 20 spaces, that then would push the cars onto the street as the one resident
5, 10,
suggested.
20 spaces is a lot for a parking lot of this area. I mean, even in the worst case scenarios at one of our shopping malls, and they mound stuff up, but there's plenty of space to the side in the grass to put the snow if that is where it needs to go. I mean,
That will be a question, well,
Yeah, so-
knowing parking lots as I do,
So-
that some parking lots can be built with a ramp to then accommodate snow removal. Some parking lots are buffered with wheel chops that won't allow the pushing of the snow into the grass.
So there are no wheel stops in this parking lot, correct? It's all curb. So it's a regular, this parking lot was designed to our parking lot standards, so it has drainage and all the other things that are in it. But no, we do not have a requirement in any parking lot in town that you have to take snow away or make sure that when we have a snow event, we just accommodate the fact that there are some spaces for a short period of time and we'll take care of it. If they're short, the commercial lots will shovel and take that away. Most small businesses or smaller places in town, to the best of my knowledge, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, do not haul their snow away unless we have some kind of massive snow event. But under those circumstances, my suspicion is that the number of...
Can snow be pushed into the retention pond, retention basin?
Basin.
I don't know how that would work logistically because it's not next to any paved area. I mean, the logical place for snow to go is here.
Right.
Up and over the curb.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And when you push it, it's going to go until it stops. So, I mean, that's in almost every parking lot. It goes on the tree medians or other places at the ends of the aisles.
Okay, different question.
Yep.
Can we require that the petitioner provide off-site parking for those large events prior to their coming to the board? I hear lots of talk of there's negotiations, there's discussions.
Okay,
The residents would be made happier if they knew that there was this provision already in place.
Under certain, it isn't necessarily unprecedented, whether or not it's actually, I only know of one circumstance, and that's when they were asking for relief for parking, for the Orthodox synagogues, for instance, because they have almost no parking requirement for most of their services, but for those other events that they do. But that has not been a requirement of, again, for something that happens once a year. If I was to tell every religious institution that you have to make an agreement with a neighboring property to accommodate every single time, like that your Christmas, Easter, or Rosh Hashanah happens, I think that would be problematic. But I'll let Pete.
Well, I think, first off, the whole purpose of the parking determination is to determine what's a reasonable amount of parking for this facility. And so if you agree that 2.5 spaces per mat is what you're looking for, then to require them to provide parking off-site would be unreasonable. Going a little step further, there was a question about the larger number, and somebody mentioned that it comes out to like 1 per 4. And yes, based on the traffic analysis that I remember, it was that on holidays, the occupancy of vehicles increases rather than the 2.5. Because during the daytime prayer sessions, and we found this out at other mosques, that it's usually individuals who drive, or 1 or 2 persons. Whereas on the weekend, if they have a holiday, then it's usually a family type event and the occupancy is larger. So really the number of parking, the vehicles parking does not increase that much.
And to answer the gentleman, Mr. Green, wherever we went, so we are capping just like we would cap the number of seats. It can only grow as big as people can sit. There's a maximum occupancy of 120 during services and 192 on the property for non-religious times. So if they're in violation of that and it turns out that that's the case, then we will do an enforcement like we've done on other religious institutions.
That was going to be my next question. So that's question number 3.
Yeah.
Tell us about enforcement and how you just said that we did that recently with an institution which exceeded its expected capacity.
Right. I'm not going to identify location because we're currently dealing with that. Yes, we just stumbled. We were there. There were some complaints about parking. They had been parking. They had gone over. We didn't necessarily notice it because they had been parking in a neighboring commercial parking lot during their services, which had been vacant. When that parking lot got closed off, they started parking all over the neighborhood. We addressed that. We addressed the complaint. we went in and did an inspection, and we discovered that they exceeded what their special use had, because this was in a business district. They had a special use for religious assembly, and we just met with them today, as a matter of fact, and they are being required to make other accommodations most of the time. They will need to use another facility. I mean, we're serious about this, so, yeah.
So Steve, if one day this mosque exceeds the 192 capacity, then...
Well, they would need to come back and ask for that to change. So what if the site plan approval is going to become a law? That law will have an ordinance number, just like every other ordinance number, and that's a law that's enforceable. If that law needs to be changed or amended, we are going to have to go through this process again, so you would get notice again of a change to that ordinance, as long as it isn't de minimis, like I'm switching my poplar tree with a maple, like that we're not going to have a public hearing about. But, yeah.
Fourth question, do we have any permits in Skokie? Do we have any permit parking in Skokie?
We only have 4 permit parking areas, and those are for places that have daily large parking overflow problems. So this is by both Skokie Swift stations, by Oakton Community College, and by Niles North High School. It is not generally, I believe, and again, correct me if wrong if this changed, it is not the village's policy to reserve a public good for a private purpose. If a neighborhood wants to get together and vacate their streets and make the private property and pay to maintain them, I guess that's fine. But in general, with the except of those extreme examples that happen daily, we do not expand parking, permit parking.
So we should not hold any expectation for the residents that there might be permits in the future?
It has not been the behavior of the board in the past to accept something that would happen on even on a once-a-week basis. That's not the purpose of permit parking.
And then my 5th question, do you know the times of the 5 daily prayer
I'm going to
sessions?
defer to someone who's a member of the congregation for that.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ahmed Sayed. So the daily 5-time daily prayers are the first one before sun rises. Nowadays we are praying around, not at the place for the sake of conversation, around 4:45 a.m. And then the midday prayer is around 1:30. It changes, around 1 o'clock, it can be at 1:30, it can be at 2 o'clock, summertime, 2:30. And then the third prayer is around 7 o'clock, 6:30 or 7. And then the 4th one is at sunset, right at the sunset. And the last one and the 5th one is around 10:45 p.m.
And is it your intention and your understanding that parishioners, that congregants will come to the mosque at each of those 5 times each day? Sometimes at 4:45, sometimes at 9 o'clock at night?
Not every member attends. When they are in the area, they come, and they do come if they live in the area. Some of the neighbors, as mentioned in the report, that they live nearby, about 5 to 6 neighbors, they are going to come walking, and then, yeah. So this is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Before you leave, any questions, just Commissioner Berman?
So what would you say the average attendance is for each one of those 5? If you're anticipating 120, a congregation size of 120, what percentage or what number of people would attend each one of those sessions?
You mean the 5-time daily prayers? To begin with, once we get the permit and everything, maybe 5 people, maybe less than 10, because we are new to the area. So, yeah, that number has been given the maximum number for the Friday prayers, 100, 120, not even at the beginning, up to, I don't know, up to 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a couple of years. After that, then we'll grow. But we will try to accommodate, and then as I have heard the concerns of the neighbors, our teachings of our Prophet is we try to follow, we try our best to follow. and we will be keeping up with that, and then we will try our best to not to have a noise or give any problems to the neighbors.
Mr. Quinn?
So in the report, it says that approximately 30 people for the 5 prayers. Is that up to 30?
Yeah, that again, that is a maximum number we have given. This is a random number, approximate number. That, but when we start, let's say we tell them, and then, so not the 30 people will come. That is the number. Let's say 30. We have the meeting, and then we say, okay, 30. Maybe start with 5 or 10. So it's not. Maybe the numbers. They worried about it, right? Oh, 30. Oh my God, 120 people. Where they're going to park? In front of my house, by my garage, or by my driveway or something? No, it's not going to happen. We will tell them. We will have the guidelines, and then our volunteers will work through that. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of the petitioners? Okay, so the staff is available.
You could ask.
You can ask Peter.
Go ahead.
So, Peter, Steve, in terms of the fencing, I mean, that 10:45 at night to be arriving, not certain what time people will be leaving, in a residential area in reasonable volume, what's the fencing requirement in terms of height, in terms of adding a light buffer to the residential homes?
The code in a residential district is 5 feet high. That's the maximum.
With this fencing, we're talking about most of it along the parking lot here is landscape-style fencing, right? I mean,
Yes.
like abrevieties or...
Right. And again, you know, where do you really put the fence, and would a wooden fence, or would that really be an adequate buffer for sound? It really won't be. The landscaping would do a better job.
But for the light into windows of residences, they swing in and out of parking places and come around the lot, would a fence offer some protection?
Possibly. Again, it's a question of where do you put the fence. We wouldn't want it up against the cul-de-sac, who would look kind of strange out there in some of these front yards. But it's things to look at.
And I guess my other question, still relative to fencing, but maybe something additional, is what the gentleman's concerned about, the end of the, north end of the lot, abutting his backyard fence. Is there a way to require some type of a barrier such that if an accelerator were to get stuck, it would not plow through into his backyard?
Sure, there could be a requirement that bollards be put there.
A minute. How many inches did you say there was between the property line and the 24 inches?
24 inches.
Yeah, we just also have to make sure that the cars are able to back out of those 90-degree parking spaces and not hit the bollards.
Yeah, the last two, they're not up to code. So if the snow freezes and that guy cannot stop, he's straight into my kitchen, 100%.
Right, and yeah, so if the car was moving forward at a fairly high speed.
Doesn't have to be fairly high.
Or
5
push.
miles per hour. It's a wood fence, 5 miles per hour.
Well, there's a
5,000
6-inch curb there also, correct?
I'm sorry?
There's a 6-inch curb there also.
6-inch curb?
Is there a curb at the back? There should be a curb all the way around the parking lot.
There's a curb there.
Steve, when I looked at, Steve,
There's curb all the way around? Yes.
when I looked at the site, I eyeballed exactly what you're talking about, and that made me pause. You have the little white vinyl fence coming around the
Yeah.
corner a little bit?
That's Isaac.
Okay.
Well, mine is 4630 Fargo. So if anybody trying to park at the last four parking lots in the end, and if there's snow that's frozen, there's no way that guy can stop. If we'll not go through, for sure we'll hit any other cars. And if there's people standing next to other parking lots, we'll hit those people as well.
Oh, your house is the one adjacent to the north end of the parking lot.
Correct.
There's a house right there. I see it on the photo. You want to pull up that photo for a second, Steve? The one with, oh, that's the one. I'm sorry, okay, that's it, right.
And the one I'm referring to is down the first house on the right there,
And if
to the
they
east of the
apply
parking
snow-
lot.
And if they apply any snow there, my basement is about 4 feet.
Sir, could you come up, please, and just,
I tried, they didn't allow me, so I'm just.
I just want to get this, I just want to get this on the record.
Whoa. All right, I'll clarify.
Can you step me out in the map, please? So if any snow,
Speaking to the microphone, please.
yes, so if any snow melts and all the water right there, my basement is about 4 feet from there. And I'm sure if they plow the snow, it's gonna be more than 2 feet. So all the water will go into the basement, that's 100%. And I could prove pictures, that will be a good proof. I mean, tree-wise, I don't think they can plant any trees.
Isn't the lot being plowed now, or what?
I'm sorry?
The lot exists, the snow is there. Nobody's using it.
Nobody plowed it. Not a lot of people were coming there, like 2 cars, 3 cars max. The past, I mean,
So you're worried that if snow gets piled up there when it's plowed?
or if it's frozen and somebody just drives to park at the last 2 or 3 parking lots and he cannot stop, it's gonna go through. I mean, it's 5 miles per hour, it's still gonna go through for sure. And right there is my kitchen. And the 2 bedrooms that are upstairs, that's 14 feet, which is Skokie code, it's 5 feet for the fence. If somebody parking from that far, coming into the parking lot, the light will hit both bedrooms on top. Not the kitchen, because you have a 5 feet fence, but the bedrooms for sure.
I'll recommend the staff to look into that and make sure that you're protected somehow.
No, we'll make an amendment right now.
Good, okay.
May I make a recommendation on the
Sure.
amendment?
Yes, sure, I'm about to.
All right, so just for clarification, I did not say that the neighbor could not speak. What I said was that the chair had asked if anyone else would like to speak and closed the public comment period. And I said if he was addressed by the chair, then that he would be able to testify.
Understood.
So I just want to be very clear that procedure. I would just like to reiterate that under almost in any circumstance, we do not regulate snow removal in any lot, no matter how close in any commercial lot or however close. However, a reasonable amendment would be that when they plow their snow, that it goes to the east and into the green space and not at the end of the parking lot. The other amend, if you choose to put some additional things for that circumstance, which arguably might occur, but again, we do not require bollard protection between any uses. But if he feels that that's the case, that's fine. There is a little more space at the end of the parking lot also. It isn't quite right there. Those last 2 are not actually parking spaces. It's residual. Is that correct, Rafi? So here and here, those are not parking spaces. They're just extra pavement. Anyway, you're welcome to make whatever amendment you like, but I just like to point that out.
Could I say something?
Please come up. And this will be it.
This will take a second.
Yeah, please. We're just getting long on time here.
No, we got here.
You say that the Skokie is 5 foot. I've seen fences at 6 foot Skokie. So if you can go an extra foot,
No, you can't.
that might help.
No.
You can go 5 foot in a
Pardon me?
residential district. 6 foot along an alley, but there really is
Well,
no alley.
I saw one.
Well,
one
Right, but
fence was-
we can make an exception, which
Yes,
is going to be
that's what
part
I'm
of my
saying.
amendment, Peter, because while this is a residential neighborhood, we have an institutional use, which was the beginning of my presentation 2
Exactly.
hours ago, butting up directly adjacent, unlike almost anywhere else in the village. Everywhere else has a natural buffer of parkland, alley, something. Nobody sits, that I know of, with a house within a few inches of parking lot.
Actually, that's not a few inches, it's at least 4 to 5 feet, because it
The
was
property line.
approved by a subdivision. And so even though it looks small, it is larger than you think. Now, the zoning board does not have the authority to, an outlet to grant that kind of a variance in height. It was taken away, it was called an exception permit. The Plan Commission only had the authority that the zoning board had. And so those things have been taken away. So I suppose you could recommend it and then we could see what the legal department might rule on it. But technically, I don't believe you have the authority to allow a taller fence.
I'm trying to make peace in very similar manner to the way that I did back at the Chicago Jewish funeral, which seemed to make people happy at that time, and that's the amendment that I'm about to present.
Sure.
I think that would help, 6-foot fence, and that would help all of us.
Well, Commissioner, if you remember the property to the east of the
Chicago Jewish?
Yes. Is at a different grade.
It's
So the
also a
fence-
different zone.
Right.
It's a business zone to a residential zone.
It was the same situation where we had the direct proximity of residents to commercial institutional use that we don't find in many other places, but we are going to find here, and we did find there. And the way that we made those people relatively happy was a good, strong board-on-board fence that both blocked the light and the traffic, the feeling of traffic in their neighborhood. That's what they were opposed to, was that feeling of
All right.
traffic. So, ready for my amendment? It's not that hard.
The first case is case 2019-17P, the parking determination. Do I have a motion to approve? Or a motion? Motion to approve. Do I have a second? Have a second, please? Second, Commissioner Burma. Thank you.
And now I move to amend.
Just a second.
That's not a parking determination. This is the one. This is the one that matters more than site approval, I think.
The purpose of the parking
This
determination
talks about the whole parking lot.
it would be on the site plan approval. The
All
parking
right,
determination is on the
I'm
site.
moving through is parking.
Commissioner, we're looking at the
Hold on,
number
hold on,
of
I'm
parking
just, I'm
spaces
reviewing
per
quickly.
mat.
Yeah, this,
If
yeah.
it was
one
a church.
pertains-
Okay, all right, I'll wait till
parking
site plan.
spaces Per seats.
All
All
right.
right, call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell is absent. Commissioner Quinn.
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas.
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin is absent. Commissioner Lexpati.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman.
Aye.
Commissioner Matei.
Aye.
Now vote aye. That's the parking determination. I have case 2019-18P. This is the site plan approval. Do I have a motion?
Should we amend it before we make a motion?
Well,
you move
no, you
first.
have to make a motion.
Now amend.
So I'll make a motion that we accept with the soon-to-be proposed amendment.
No, you have to propose.
You just move it.
All right, then you're making the amendment.
I can move it with an amendment.
That's right. You
Okay,
have to.
I'll make the motion then with the following amendments. Number one, that snow removal be required to the east and to the west, but not to the north in the parking lot.
Wait.
That's off-site. You can't go west.
You can't do that.
No, within the parking lot itself. Within the parking lot. We're not pushing it into the grass no matter what. I don't think it's going to rise above the curb. So I am pushing it to the east and to the west and not to the north. Within the confines of the parking lot. That's number one.
So you're going to require that snow stay in the parking lot?
You move it in property line.
I just want to be clear.
It's got to be
Within
east.
the parking lot and the property, oh, I see, because to the east there is more property.
There's
that is-
grass.
Just not to the north.
Just not to.
Snow will not be removed to the north. And snow will not be pushed nor removed. to the-
No. Wait, snow's gonna be removed. You're talking about where they put it.
Removed from the pavement of the lot to the north. I'm trying to fashion this.
Relocate.
Thank you.
Or store.
Stored nor plowed. I don't want snow plowed up against that north end of the parking lot. That is my.
Wait.
Yes?
We have a problem with semantics here. I mean, the lot's gonna be plowed.
Yes,
Okay, you're just concerned about where they're gonna put.
Relocate it
Where they
to.
pile the snow.
yes,
So let's say pile of snow.
fine. And I'm fashioning this as we go, fine. Snow cannot be piled within the lot to the north end of the lot. That's only number one. Number two, that bollards be required, that the petitioner be required to install bollards at the north end of the parking lot and at the point where the parking lot is in close proximity to the residences to the east, there shall be bollards placed by the petitioner so that cars cannot roll out of the parking lot to either the properties to the east at that close proximity or to the property to the north.
Can you just explain that? You're saying you want bollards here?
No?
Here?
No.
There you go.
Yeah, but move down. All that was 3 bollards, right, there we go. Bollards right there, at that point, where the parking lot is in close proximity to the residential property.
How far apart? What are you talking about?
I'll leave that to Steph.
I think we could work that out.
Okay.
I'm envisioning 4 bollards at that point and 4 bollards to the
May I
north.
suggest, Commissioner, rather than say ballots, a barrier?
No, it would have to be something that would be preventing cars from rolling.
Barrier.
Well, an appropriate barrier sufficient to stop a vehicle.
Appropriate barriers to stop a vehicle. Fine. Number 3 on my amendment, that the entire parking lot, that the parking lot on its north end be screened by a 6-foot-high fence to be constructed by the petitioners, board on board.
They already have a fence, okay. So you want the petitioners to put a board-on-board,
6-foot
six-foot-high
fence on the north end of the parking lot.
I think as Peter just discussed, you can make that recommendation,
Right.
but we can't.
It's part of my amendment. Everything we do is recommending. So this is a recommendation. Part of my amendment is this recommendation. And I think I'm at number 5.
Yeah, you're on 4.
Well, no, but I'm extending, instead of lumping that together, there's a 5-foot fence on the north end, but now on the east side, the entire eastern side of the parking lot, this is point number 5, there shall be a screen, either vegetative or board-on-board fence, sufficient to block the headlights that will certainly shine through from the parking lot to the residential neighborhood. I can't do anything about the parking. That's my 5 points in my amendment.
I still only have 4. Did someone get all these down?
I got 4.
Okay.
4?
Fine.
Okay.
Snow, fence, bollards, fence, screen. That's fine.
And your motion was to approve with those conditions.
That's correct.
Okay.
And to recommend.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Jeff Berman. Okay. Call for the vote. Commissioner DeQueen?
Aye.
Commissioner Scott Berman?
Aye.
Commissioner Villegas?
Aye.
Commissioner Luxpati?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeff Berman?
Aye.
Commissioner Matei?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye. Again, we are a recommending body to the Board of Trustees. This report will go to the board. If you, like I say, if you signed up, we will notify you when that meeting will occur. Okay? Again, you don't have, if you haven't spoken, you're more than welcome to sign up and to be notified. Anything else before the board? Nothing? This meeting is adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming and drive home carefully.